Here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts. Hey, Pete, ever wonder what Steven Spielberg's favorite film is?
You know, Andy, I've heard he loves classics like Lawrence of Arabia, Meet Me in St. Louis.
Imagine chatting with him about why those films resonate with him so much.
That's exactly what we do on our podcast, Movies We Like. We've had incredible guests like actress Dee Wallace, cinematographer Eric Messerschmidt, director Steve Miner, and former Disney animators Tom and Tony Bancroft.
They share their favorite films and the impact they've had on their careers, offering fascinating insights into the craftsmanship and storytelling techniques that make these movies so special.
If you're curious about the magic behind the scenes, subscribe to Movies We Like from True Story FM on your favorite podcast app. New episodes are released on the fourth Monday of each month with early access for our members.
Join us on Movies We Like as we explore the movies we all like with the people who make them.
And Stephen, our people will call your people. Let's make this happen, puppy.
Subscribe today.
What's up, most excellent friends?
It's Chrissy and Nathan from the Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast.
It's a podcast where a filmmaker and a comedian
And their most excellent guests,
adventure their way through the 80s movies we think we love
or might have missed.
with our grown-up eyes to see how they hold up.
Join us for delightful discussion,
Rollicking recaps.
ratings, and deep-cut recommendations.
Plus, members get some extra fun chit-chat with the hosts after the show.
Download the Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast today at truestory.fm.
Or find it wherever the finest podcasts are stored.
And do remember to keep the Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast motto in mind.
Be excellent to each other and...
Party on.
Party on, dudes.
Coming up on The Devil's Details, now with 30% more Satan. Paradise Regained, Books 1 and 2. Good morning, Star Lovelies, and welcome to another episode of The Devil's Details, a show where we dig up, decipher, dissect, and deconstruct the many forms of the devil. One of my names is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I sometimes go by Keenan Diaz.
And we're just two lost souls hitchhiking down the highway to hell. And just a reminder, today's episode was originally recorded as bonus content for our first podcast, The Exorcist Minute, so I think we should hand it over. Take it away, past Lester and Keenan. Today we are covering the first half of John Milton's Paradise Regained. Last time, you'll remember, we finished up his epic poem Paradise Lost. However, the last two books were noticeably lacking in Satan content. That is to say, there was none at all. So we decided to go out with a bang by covering Paradise Regained, which has a much closer Satan to stanza ratio. You ever notice that Satan is in the word stanza? Well, now you'll never forget it.
Oh, no.
But folks, if these poems were serials, Paradise Regained would be a smaller box, but on the front of it, it would say, now with 30% more Satan. It is actually 33.3. I did check.
So what's the recommended daily value, though,
The recommended daily...
of Satan?
I mean, it depends on who you're asking. I mean, if it's 33.3, I would say double that. And then you got an adequate amount of Satan.
That's right.
But yes, folks, this poem is jam-packed with Satan. There is a heaping helping of Satan in every bite. We started this thing with, all bonus episodes, and we made it all the way to Paradise Lost, and I just imagine Milton finishing up his masterpiece and the church going, this is good, but your version of the fall had too much Satan in it. To make up for that, we need you to write a follow-up about Jesus regaining paradise. Otherwise, people are going to think that you're on Team Satan. And so Milton's like, okay, boys. And he strolls on over to the epic poem factory and he's whistling, and that's never good. And then he very deliberately pulls a lever and then turns around like, oops, all Satan. And that's Paradise Regained.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So the first thing to note is that there is no argument at the top of this first book.
Yeah.
Nor any of the other books. Some say it's because this poem is a lot smaller and simpler than Paradise Lost. I also like to imagine that Milton is enough of a celebrity at this point that he just refuses to do them. He's like, do you know who I am? I'm John fucking Milton. Figure it out for yourself.
But the poem, because it doesn't have an argument that's in third person, it starts with I. Like
yes.
The first person. Who, Lester, who is that? Who's the I? Is it John Milton?
It is John Milton.
Oh my God. Well, that changes how I should read this whole fucking. All right, let me look back at this while you do. Go on, continue.
He's back, folks. Yes, remember, John Milton had also disappeared from the final books of Paradise Lost, but now he's back in his Dickensian, Roaldalian, Lemony Snicketian wonder, and he's talking to us.
Well, you should have told me that.
Hey, you.
Hey, you, it's me,
It's
John
me.
Milton.
John Milton.
You want to hear about some Paradise Regained?
Yeah. But no, okay, so like the first line is, I, who erewhile the happy garden sung, by one man's disobedience lost, now sing recovered paradise to all mankind. So he's like, you may remember me from such epic poems as Paradise Lost. And here he is once again calling upon a muse to help him write his poem. And once again, that muse is the Holy Spirit. Specifically, he says, "Thou Spirit, who lett'st this glorious eremite into the desert." I feel like he worded that so it could be Jesus or him.
Well, that was my trouble. When he's saying I was like, is this Jesus? Is this Milton? Is this the devil? I didn't know.
So Milton is deliberately fucking with you.
All right, I thought so. I've been saying that this whole time. He wrote this just for me,
Yeah.
to embarrass me on national radio.
Exactly. That was the goal the whole time. But yeah, folks, this story is about Jesus in the desert, but he's calling upon the same Spirit to aid him as he goes back into his own proverbial desert to write this thing. So he's like, you who first led Jesus into the desert, or you who first led me into the desert, AKA Paradise Lost. I don't know. Either way. But from there, we open right up on Jesus's baptism. The, quote, great proclaimer, that's John the Baptist, is calling everyone to be baptized, and Jesus is just part of the crowd. Quote, with awe the regions round, and with them came from Nazareth the son of Joseph, deemed to the flood Jordan, came as then obscure, unmarked, unknown. But John recognizes him, and we get that famous moment where Jesus is baptized, and the dove comes down, and everyone hears the voice of God say, "This is my beloved son." But someone else is here too. Someone else heard the news and came running, or flying, with all the rest. Satan is there to witness the baptism, and when he hears God say that this is his beloved son, Milton says he is, quote, thunderstruck. Now, our old pal, Professor John Rogers of Yale Courses on YouTube, points out, and this is really cool, that Milton has only used that word, thunderstruck, one other time in all of his poetry. This is one of the 2 times he has used that word. Can y'all guess the other time he used it?
Not me.
No. I love, as if I was, I don't know why I was like, I had stopped to wait. What am I, Dora?
Kinda, yeah.
I guess, yeah.
You're Dora, I'll be Swiper.
Well, no,
You just tell me when not to swipe.
Satan is obviously Swiper.
No, then what? I had to be Diego. That's
Deceiver,
boring.
no deceiving. Accuser, no accusing. You're,
I'm Diego, her cousin. I'm boring. It's fine. I get it.
No. What's
I'm
the...
kind of in these episodes. Not really. I don't know if anybody remembers anything Diego ever did
No,
on Dora the Explorer.
it's Dora and who's the
Oh,
the other?
Boots. You're being
Boots.
very nice.
Yeah.
You're very nice to include me as Boots.
Boots, right?
The monkey.
Yeah. And
That's
Milton
very,
is the
very nice.
map.
Yeah. So I'm either Boots who does not speak, or
Mhm.
Diego who
No,
who
Boots
speaks
does.
but has
Boots-
nothing to say.
Boots speaks.
Boots the monkey speaks.
Yes. He's got a lot of smart things to say.
I'll try to. Oh, well, thank you. That's very nice. It's very kind of you.
I imagine a lot of people like Boots even more than Dora.
Oh, sure. Sure.
And you know, like Boots has got his own stuff he's working on, and
All right, I'm looking at Boots' lines.
uh-huh.
I love nuts. I love chocolate. I love my ball.
These are the roles that people dream of. But yeah, okay. So Thunderstruck, folks.
Yeah, when was somebody thunderstruck in the world of Paradise Lost?
So it is actually in book 6. 6 of Paradise Lost. Remember, that is the flashback to the war in heaven, and it is the moment when the Son, that is Jesus before he was human, is routing the rebel angels, and Milton says he, quote, drove them before him thunderstruck. He drives them to the crystal wall of heaven, where they dive off the edge into hell to save themselves. Rogers says that is the only other instance that Milton uses the word thunderstruck. And so here, Satan is once again thunderstruck as he witnesses the baptism of Jesus. So both instances feature Satan and Jesus. First one, he's driving Satan out of heaven, and now here Satan is witnessing his baptism on earth. And both of these make me think of the verse in Luke where Jesus says he saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. But yeah, I really like that. I thought that was really, really cool. Now, watch, we continue reading this thing and we get like 15 more instances of thunderstruck. We're like, Rogers, you led us astray.
Dr. Rogers, no.
There is actually one more instance. I found it. You can credit this to me,
Okay.
but I didn't do much. I just did like a word search in the PDF. It's in the first argument. It says, the fallen angels lay thunderstruck and astonished. But maybe Rogers isn't counting the arguments because it's not part of the poem originally.
All right. You got this one, Dr. Rogers.
Yeah. But yeah, suffice it to say, Satan is shook, right? So he calls another council. He really loves doing that. But this time he does it in the air, and he addresses the demons. He says, O ancient powers of air and this wide world, for much more willingly I mention air, this our old conquest, than remember hell, our hated habitation. Well ye know how many ages as the years of men this universe we have possessed and ruled in manner at our will the affairs of earth, since Adam and his facile consort Eve lost paradise, deceived by me. So they are no longer in hell.
Right.
I don't know why I was surprised by this. They literally build a highway at the end of the first poem. But for some reason, I never thought of them actually escaping. But here it seems they really have become the temporary rulers of this world. And it's so refreshing to get back to this idea. As we know, folks, this was the idea for a long time. Before we even had the concept of hell, the demons were, of the air. That was how it was in the Testament of Solomon. Remember, they lived in the firmament. But at some point around the Middle Ages, Satan became synonymous with hell. And although he wasn't the first to put Satan there, our good buddy Dante certainly helped establish the idea that he was trapped down there. And now we just assume he's always down there, and the demons pop up to Earth for a visit occasionally. That's the popular idea now, right? It's like he's down there all the time, but then like he pops up here. He's got, the Wicked Witch's crystal ball, and he's looking at us.
But if so I like that. Okay, so we've said, okay, he can be here, and they make it clear in the text that they come up from hell kind of whenever they want, right? So that's good. That sort of fills in that gap, because we're jumping forward 2,000 years from the end of no, more than that. How many years? Oh, geez, this is when did Cain and Abel die? Oh, God, thousands of years.
Yeah, thousands,
millennia.
Millennia.
Yeah, millennium. Okay. So
you want to do that over? Or?
No, I think that's a good question. No, I'm Boots. I know my place. I don't get the demo retake here. But it's been thousands of years, and so they're now in this place where they're comfortable coming up and doing mayhem, and then I guess going back down there whenever they want, right?
Yeah, I think that's implied. I think in later books it is implied when he starts talking to Jesus that his home base is still hell, but now it's like he has two kingdoms.
Right.
Yeah. This is his summer home.
This is his summer home. Yeah, whenever he feels like it. But so he's got the Wicked Witch's powers of being able to look, through space at least, right? But there must also be Snake Week at some point where he's not able to come up. So
right.
It's unfortunate for Jesus that he got baptized in one of the 51 weeks that was not Snake Week. Where,
exactly.
Yeah, where all the devils are snakes.
Can you imagine that? Like he's like, oh, it's I got to work in the middle of Snake Week.
it must be their least favorite time, I think, is the implication that they
Right.
turn into snakes against their will. But it's like their only holiday, as far as I know. Do they celebrate Beelzebub's birthday at a certain point? I don't believe so.
Yeah, well, you see, now you painted a picture, Keenan. Like, Beelzebub shows up, right? He clocks in and he looks around, and it looks like just another day in the office. And he kind of, he peeks over at the calendar and he's like, "Oh, is any no, there's
not there.
nothing, no circles, no highlights." Okay, right. And he just goes through the whole day and nobody wishes him a happy birthday or anything like that, right? And he opens up his lunchbox and he realizes he left his lunch at home.
Oh my God!
Right, he gets a call from the credit card company saying that there was a fraudulent charge, and now his card is frozen. And just when this day couldn't get any worse, over the intercom, we hear Satan's voice, and he's like, "Beelzebub, could you step into my office?"
Oh no!
And everyone just kind of looks at him. It's like, "Oh no!" Right? And Beelzebub's remembering, and he was like, "Man, like I forgot that report. I just I knew that was gonna come back and bite me in the butt." And he goes in there, and everybody's there, and they're wearing their little party hats, and it's like, surprise!
Even the demons who were out in the cubicle farm
I
area
realized
going,
that as I was telling the story. I was like, this doesn't work.
No, it does work, of course. They're like, oh God, he's getting in trouble, whatever. And then they morph into the other room because they're demons.
Exactly. There's no office. This is,
Oh, and then he's like, and he tells a story of what a terrible day at the office is having. That was all an illusion we put into your mind to fuck with you for your birthday. There's no office, there's no cubicle, there's no reports.
You don't even have a lunchbox.
It's like, guys.
But then someone taps him on the shoulder. It's like, but seriously, your card has been frozen, and we're going to need you to come down to the bank during working hours because that's the only time we're open.
Yeah, your card has been frozen, and no matter how hard it flaps its wings to get out of the ice, it just makes the ice freeze even more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, Beelzebub's birthday. That's the other one. That's the one like he would call ahead. He's like, "Sorry, Jesus, I cannot miss this. Snake Week, okay."
Oh, I understand, buddy. I get it. I get it. Because that's what Jesus would do.
Right. He'd be totally fine with that.
He'd be totally fine with it, right?
He got Beelzebub a gift. He's like, "Did you get my? I sent it to priority mail." It's like, "Oh yeah, it's here." So I'm sorry, I can't be there. It's like, no. We'll say that you're here in spirit. I like this. I like them getting along. This is nice.
Yeah, Jesus loves everyone.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I also like how Milton has both, right? Like, so he has them being in hell, but then also being, spirits of the air, right? Again, he's taking everything that they know about the devil up to this point, and a lot of it is contradictory, and he's putting it all into one story and making it all make sense, right? So he's like, well, yes, they are fallen angels, and yes, there is a hell, and yes, they were put there for a while, and then they got out, and now they're demons, and like, of the air, like in the Old Testament, and Satan is a prince of this world, like in the New Testament, right? He's like, all of these can be true at the same time, and here's how, right? And again, he might not be the first, but him and Dante were certainly huge contributors, so much so that we often think something is biblical when it's actually just these guys.
Right.
But yeah, so Satan's up there in the clouds with the other demons, and he's like, guys, we are in trouble. It's finally happening. The prophecy is coming true. The Savior is here, born of woman to crush my head with his heel. I have watched this kid ever since he was born, and I thought something was up. And I just now saw him get baptized, and I saw the heavens open up, and I heard God's voice confirm it. So it is him.
Well, it's convenient that he was there.
He was right there. But here's the thing, folks. Professor Rogers points out that in this poem, neither Satan nor Jesus seem to recognize each other from Paradise Lost. I didn't get that when I first read it, so I don't know if I agree, but let's keep
Mhm.
an eye out for that. And if it is there, Rogers says that's intentional. It is not a mistake. Milton did intend for this to be the Satan from Paradise Lost.
Mhm.
And perhaps neither of them recognizing each other is the product of Jesus becoming human and Satan dwelling on the earth for so long. But to back it up, we do have Satan saying right here, his first begot we know, and sore have felt when his fierce thunder drove us to the deep. So he does remember the Son
Mhm.
and how he defeated them in the war in heaven. He remembers all of that. But then he says, who this is we must learn. For man he seems in all his lineaments, though in his face the glimpses of his Father's glory shine.
Mm.
So Rogers is saying Satan doesn't get that they're the same person.
Mhm.
I like that idea, but I first read it like Satan was saying, we know who he was. Let's test his mettle now that he's human.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong. Let's keep an eye out.
I understand that. I understand why Satan wouldn't be able to recognize God as he is now.
Right, yeah.
He's incarnate.
Mhm.
I don't understand why God wouldn't know who Satan was, even just because he's got a beard and it's 33 years later or whatever. And I don't get that.
Yeah.
I understand why Satan wouldn't recognize Jesus, but Jesus is God and knows all and has all the foresight of, well, I don't know. In some fictionalized versions of this, the son understands he is to be crucified but doesn't know all of the details of it.
Right.
And speaks in the kind of prophecy that was common within Jewish prophecy back then of
Right.
you will do this. And then as it goes on in the Gospels, he gets more specific. He's like, hey, guess what? You're going to do something 3 times tonight, and gets very specific. But yeah, in another incarnations, he is as all knowing as the Father God is. So I don't know.
Right.
It seems like if he doesn't recognize Satan, then he is not as all knowing as some people would say he is. Not everybody.
And even if, I mean, yeah, that is a tough thing to wrap my head around,
Mhm.
even just because, like, I mean, I think it's a tough thing for everybody to wrap their heads around, because we have divisions of Christianity that say, no, he is God.
Right.
He is exactly God. And
Exactly
he's
the
just
same.
God
Yeah.
in human form.
Right.
And then we have other sayings like, no, he is the Son of God. They're different entities.
Mhm.
And then we have like no, he's a man
Mhm.
filled with the Holy Spirit. I think that's, I don't think I'm being blasphemous.
No, I don't think
that's,
so. But yeah, but then you wrestle with questions like, one, he's being crucified. How could he say, Father, why have thou forsaken me, if he's the Father?
Right. Yeah. So I think it's one of those mysteries that hasn't been solved, or it's not been unanimously agreed upon.
Right.
Exactly how the relationship between God and Jesus is.
Right. Mhm.
But even if he is separate, the Son definitely knows who Satan is.
I think so. Yeah, exactly.
Milton's son, who drove his father's chariot and
Mhm.
routed Satan out of heaven,
Right.
remembers that battle.
Mhm.
So the only thing that I can think of to make Rogers's statement true is that in becoming human, the son changing into Jesus gets a little bit of amnesia, like kind of like a whole Etch-a-Sketch thing. Like he doesn't remember his heavenly existence before,
Mhm.
maybe.
Well, that's interesting to figure out, because again, all sorts of depictions of Jesus have different levels of what they think of as his powers, his powerfulness.
So so back to Satan's council. It's actually not much of a council.
Yeah, but Satan loved be having councils.
Yep. They don't think it be like it do.
Right. He loves having councils where they're just for show. They're not really councils.
Exactly.
So again, it's Milton's like, okay, if Milton is a Republican, as in not a monarchist, he's showing somebody using the auspices of democracy, but really just being a tyrant, a dictator.
Yeah. So he's basically like, in this council, he's like, there's no time to debate. We're on the edge of extinction. Let me take care of it. I got you all this far. I'm gonna do the same thing I did with Adam. And the demons are so, like, they're so blindsided by this news that the end is nigh. They just immediately unanimously vote for Satan to handle all of this. And so the council is dismissed with nobody saying anything, and Satan heads off back toward the River Jordan.
All right.
And as he heads out, we pan upward above the clouds, and yes, God has been watching all of this. Classic God from Paradise Lost, right? I love how we start the poem with Jesus' baptism. We pan out
Mhm.
and Satan is watching. And then we pan out again and God is watching Satan watching Jesus. So God's up there with Gabriel this time.
Mhm.
Remember in Paradise Lost, we'd hard cut to God and he's talking to the Son. But now the Son is down on earth. So now it's Gabriel.
Okay.
And God reminds Gabriel of how he sent him down there to reveal to Mary that she would be the mother of God. And now Jesus is grown up and Satan means to tempt him. And God says, I think Satan would have learned his lesson after Job. Because he's still George Lucas.
Mhm.
But he says, yeah, he's like, he intentionally mentions Job. He's like, oh, you think Satan would have learned after Job, which I like. Again, stitching all of these together in one story. But yeah, God reveals that this is the beginning of the end. The rebel angels have won the battle and taken Earth, but now the war is coming to a climax. And it's going to be a war in the stars. No. But yeah, the last part of this war will start with Jesus being tempted in the desert.
I wonder why Milton didn't write one about Satan and Job, because again, like, as the authors of Job were writing it, they weren't thinking necessarily that Satan who was tricking Job was, the great, overarching evil.
Right.
So it seems like an opportunity for Milton to make that. So he just does it in one line here and says that was Satan with a capital S and not a Satan.
Right.
But so he's retconning the Old Testament to fit with
Yes.
the New Testament understanding. And so he's saying, yes, that was like part 2 of this great battle after.
Right.
Yeah. I just wonder why he didn't want to write part 2. He just says, okay, well, part 2 can be covered with these little lines here or there.
Well, because I think it would have to be between Paradise Lost and this book,
Yeah.
where Paradise is regained. So it would be just like, if it's a trilogy, it's like Paradise Lost, Paradise Still Lost,
Paradise Jobed.
Paradise Job. Yeah. a Job and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that
Remember
one.
that children's book?
Yeah, that one's like a Kevin James movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, where he's just like getting screwed over by Satan and can't see Satan the entire time. And
Right. Yeah.
because in the Kevin James movie, it's always Kevin James. He's married to some much hotter woman than him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's messing things up with her. And by the end of it, he gets her back and all that. But in this one, nope.
Nope.
He gets
In this one, she dies.
She dies. Terrible boils all over.
Yeah.
And he gets a new wife at the end, so don't worry about
Yeah.
it. He gets
There you
more wives and more children than he had before, so it's all fine. What God did.
Yeah, it's all fine. Unless you think of them as people and not property.
The women and children? What?
Yeah.
But anyways, I just think it's interesting because, yeah, Paradise Regained is now trying to catch us up to the New Testament and
Yes.
say, like, these characters from the Old Testament retcon of Paradise Lost are these same characters in Paradise Regained.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So stuff has happened in between that. And we're going to get little flashes of that as well. Satan is going to mention, kingdoms of the world that have risen and fallen. And he's like, and he's basically going to mention his greatest hits and all these other things, all these other like evil deeds and miracles and stuff like that are going to be referenced. But yeah, so God is telling Gabriel that the last part of this battle is Jesus being tempted in the desert. And you actually get the sense, like, this is a little closer to what we were hoping for with like Adam and Eve, the fallibility of God, that he loves Adam and Eve so much, he believes in them and he doesn't think they will fail the test. And now he's kind of doing that. Like he's stating it a little bit more explicitly here with Jesus, which is a nice touch if what Professor Rogers says is true, if Jesus really has been somewhat severed from God in becoming human and can't exactly remember like his mission or what he's supposed to do or what he's supposed to watch out for.
Okay.
Yeah. So God makes that announcement. All of heaven rejoices. And speaking of Jesus, we pan down out of the clouds back to earth and we see Jesus, and he is contemplating what it all means, wondering what to do next, how best to, quote, publish his godlike office. Kind of see what you're doing there, Milton. So it might very well be that he has been struck with some amnesia, maybe similar to what Satan has, and so he's thinking about like how to continue his mission, and so he is currently in Bethabara, which I looked up. It means House of Crossing.
Okay.
And this is historically where John the Baptist recognized Jesus as the Son of God. I never knew that place, but it got me wondering. It's like, Bethabara, Bethlehem, what does that mean? And I looked it up. Guys, this is really cool. Bethlehem means house of bread.
Okay.
It means that in Hebrew, and the Arabic name means house of meat. Which, again, we're not trying to be funny here. That's what incarnate means, right? It means to be put into meat, right? Put into flesh. And so I love that Jesus is born in a place that in one language means house of bread and another means house of meat. And his divinity is revealed in the house of crossing.
Okay.
Which, obviously cross, but also crossing the threshold, right, in the hero's journey. So just some food for thought, just some bread and meat to go with that apple. It was all me, by the way, not Rogers.
Oh, good.
Right, I got all of that. I feel like every time I come up with something really clever, I gotta clarify that it was me. Because I'm so prideful.
But that makes sense. So like a common name for a synagogue is like Beth Shalom.
Right.
And that would, so I'm looking it up here. Yeah. So Beth is house. Shalom is peace, right? Like hello, goodbye, welcome, greeting, shalom.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah. So it's a house of peace. House of peace. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Man.
One of my favorite Family Guy jokes is that the synagogue there is they go to Temple Beth supporting Acthrith.
Oh boy. But yeah, I love languages. I love picking these things up. It's fun.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. But yeah, back to Jesus. He decides that solitude is best for contemplation, and so he leaves Bethabara and goes into the desert. And here we go. This is that part of the story. And this is the first time we hear Jesus speak. And it's a soliloquy. And back in Paradise Lost, we learned to associate that with evil because Satan did most of the soliloquizing up to the fall. And then, Adam and Eve started doing it as well. But here, Milton has Jesus doing it. But I think he's doing it not just to make us recall Satan, but to show Jesus as the mirror opposite. You look at the content of Satan's soliloquies, and they're full of self-pity and self-deception. Also, weirdly, rhetoric and persuasion. He persuades himself to stay on the path of evil. And he's really good at making sound and logical arguments to be evil, right? And it's no different from how he talks to other people. He lies to himself just as much as he lies to others. With Jesus, we open up here with him admitting that he is overwhelmed by these heavenly thoughts and also admitting that they do not match his present state. It's too much for his human brain and his human heart. He reflects on how he was kind of a weird child. He wasn't interested in games. He just saw all this suffering and he wanted to figure out how best to help people. He became obsessed with the law of God and he studied it and even went to the temple when he was 12 and conversed with the teachers of the law. That's, that famous scene. But he admits here that he wanted more than that. He wants to do great deeds and heroic acts to liberate Israel from Rome. He's admitting he desired this, but he continues. He wants to liberate with words, not swords. And I love how that's like differentiated by a single letter, right? He wants to defeat senseless violence and also try to win back enemies as friends.
Is liberating Israel from Rome, is that biblical or something that we've added onto it? Do you happen to know?
Oh, what Jesus wants?
Yeah, did Jesus want to liberate Israel from Rome?
Oh, I don't think so. I
don't think so, right?
Yeah, no. But I think that's the misconception, not by us, but by like the people in the story. They're like, it's like, oh, you're gonna, I even his followers, I think. But I think what you're saying is Milton is having Jesus say it.
Yeah,
right
Milton
here.
says that one thing I want to do is to rescue Israel from the Roman yoke.
Yeah.
So if he means that geopolitically, because Milton is a geopolitical writer in his other writing, right? Then Milton is saying that Jesus did want to liberate Israel as a geopolitical state, like as a kingdom.
Hmm.
But Israel, of course, the trouble is that Israel also means the presence of being with God,
Right.
which is just a name for the state that Jesus' people had, so that the Hebrews had. They were in Israel with, and so to liberate that from Roman overthrowing Roman control over their spirits. So
Yeah. It's weird that he has it in here,
Yeah.
and he has Jesus saying it. I'm wondering if, because right now he's reflecting,
Mhm.
and he's reflecting on his youth,
Mhm.
and I'm wondering if he's saying that's what he used to want
Okay.
before he understood better,
Mhm.
and he's like, but now I'm older, I understand that that's not what I really want.
Yeah, because I'm with you in the biblical, and again, like everyone can interpret the Bible in multiple ways, it turns out, and believe that to the core of their being, that what they read in the Bible is
Yeah.
is the truth of the capital T. But like from my reading of the Gospels, Jesus is not concerned with political revolution at all, and he's as you were saying, is misconstrued as a rebel, and that's why he's arrested and tried and crucified for saying that he's the king of the Jews, which is rebellious against Roman rule,
or for being purported as saying he's the king.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's like for Christians, that's a known thing, and we're so like familiar with the fact that everybody is misunderstanding him that we don't. But I actually talk about this a little bit further down the page. I'm excited to get to this.
I'm just on guard of Milton, an Englishman, like putting this political meaning for his day in Jesus's heart.
Right.
That worries me a little.
Yeah. I mean, he's already like, if my assumption is correct, and he like compared himself to Jesus, like at the very, very top here, as he's like walking back into this proverbial desert.
Right, exactly.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll see. But it does lend credence to Roger's argument that Jesus doesn't know who he is yet.
Okay.
So he's reflecting that, like, when I was younger, I thought my mission was to liberate Israel.
Right.
Now I understand it's a little bit deeper than that.
Okay.
Right. So then, like maybe Rogers is right about this. We'll see. But yeah, so Jesus goes on, and he sort of retells the entire Jesus story up to this point.
There's our good old Milton. Yeah.
Right. Milton, you could have stopped right there. Like, we know who this is. This isn't Nizrock.
He's a little chef.
This isn't. We're not like, well, is this the tree of life, or is this the tree of not? Give us a little bit more of that. But like, this is Jesus.
Right.
Yeah. But again, like Roger says, if he doesn't know who he is yet, or doesn't fully believe it, then I guess it makes sense. He's kind of like recounting his life up to this point, right? And so, while Satan's soliloquies always end with him fully convinced in what he needs to do, Jesus's soliloquy here ends with him admitting that he has no idea what the next step is, but he is trusting that God will reveal it to him. And you know what? Maybe I'm right about Milton making them mirror opposites of each other, because look how he opens the next stanza.
Okay.
Quote, "So spake our morning star, then in his rise, and, looking round, on every side beheld a pathless desert, dusk with horrid shades." So,
So Jesus is this morning star?
He is our morning star.
I sure read that as I read it all wrong. So, so thanks, Milton, with your rhetoric here. Yeah, your interesting language. Yeah, I totally misread that. I thought Satan was saying it because it said morning star. So
but now, Satan's not here yet. We don't see Satan yet.
God damn it! I'm trying so hard.
It's okay. Keenan, it's not your fault.
I know, man.
It's not. It's not your fault.
No, it's not. It's his fault, man.
It's not your fault.
All right, hey, get off
fault.
of me, man. All right, get off of me, man. Fuck, why did it have to be so hard? I've read Shakespeare. I've read Bacon. Fuck.
I know. But yeah, I agree with you, Keenan. A little weird here, a little confusing, a little intentional.
A little sacrilegious, maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact that he says our morning
Mhm.
star, right? Like, is that so he's our light, he's our hope, I guess.
Okay.
But morning star, I was like, there's no other there's no way he didn't.
No,
That's what that's supposed to be,
intentional.
right?
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think that goes with my idea that he's pitting Jesus against Satan in this
Mhm.
like they are opposites of each other
Absolutely.
almost. Yeah. So he goes deeper and deeper into the desert, and it gets wilder and darker. But the animals don't bother him. They either become quote mild at his
Mhm.
presence, or they slither away at his approach. And then one day he comes upon someone else out there in the middle of nowhere. This old man, specifically a shepherd, gathering sticks for a fire.
Mhm.
And I immediately thought of Jafar's old man disguise
Uh-huh.
in Aladdin, right?
Bring me the lamp.
Yep. That's exactly. So the old man stops gathering wood and he looks at Jesus and he's like, "Oh, fancy meeting you here. You look like that son of God fella that we've heard out. You know, we don't get much news out here in the boonies, but that was big enough news to make my ears perk up."
So what? You just started walking around in the desert till you saw the guy you heard about on the news?
Oh no, I was just out here gathering wood. This is what I do when I'm not shepherding, because that's what he checks his clothes. Yeah, that's what I am.
yeah. Then he manifests a couple of sheep on his side.
Yeah.
That's Pain and Panic from
Yeah,
Hercules. Yeah,
exactly, right? One of them still has like a little tail, and he kicks him. But yeah, so classic Satan. He's got his disguise, right?
Mhm.
And so Jesus replies, "The one who brought me here will bring me back. I need no other guide."
Mhm.
He knows who this is, and I love the contrast here, right? So much theatricality from this old man, right?
Mhm.
He's so elaborate, right? He's got a costume, he's got a backstory. He's like, "Oh, well, a day." Um, like I know it's not supposed to be funny, or
Mhm.
or is it?
Well, I
it-
don't know what you're supposed to think because I thought you were supposed to know it's the devil because we heard him speaking as the morning star, but that was Jesus. So I don't know what. to think
Oh,
anymore.
okay, yeah.
I don't know.
But
But
I mean-
are you supposed to know it's the devil the whole time?
I mean, the
Like,
whole
what else
time.
would this? Right. What else would this be? This character who we haven't. Everything else is biblical so far. And
Right. This is such a departure from the Bible story, and it's like,
right.
and who else is out here,
Just shepherds, just wood gatherers.
right? I think it's supposed to be. It has to be comical
Okay, yeah.
because it's so obvious. Even though Milton hasn't said it yet, he hasn't revealed,
Right.
who this. We know who this is, right? But the old man continues. He's like, "Oh, that's good. You don't need a guide. If you really were the son of God, we don't know much about that out here. Us desert folk, we rarely have enough to eat or drink. But you can probably turn these stones into bread if you wanted to. Boy, I'd sure love to see that. I'm just a simple shepherd. Boy, I'd go back home and I'd be like, Ma, you'll never guess what happened today." Yeah, okay, like I'm making some of this up, but
yeah.
but it's very close. And so Jesus is like, "Okay, stop. I know who you are, and it's written that man cannot live on bread alone."
Mhm.
And immediately Satan drops his disguise. He's like, "Okay, fine, I'm the devil, whatever." But then he's like, "But you'll notice I am no longer trapped in hell.
Mhm.
I have free reign of the earth. I come and go as I please. I can even go back up and visit heaven sometimes.
Uh-huh.
You might have heard the story of Job. Yeah, God told me to do that. I also did some other dirty work for God. I helped dethrone King Ahab by speaking through his false prophets. That was me.
Mhm.
None of the other angels wanted to do it, but you know what? I still serve God, and even though I've lost his love, I can still admire his works, and that's why I'm here. I wanted to get a good look at you. People think I'm the enemy of all mankind. Why should I be? They never did me wrong. It wasn't them that kicked me out of heaven.
Mhm.
I'm actually grateful to them. They helped me escape my prison, and now I live here with them, and I help them, and I advise them. Yeah, maybe at first I was trying to drag them down with me, but I realized it wouldn't make me feel better. Besides, they'll be lifted up again, and I never will."
That's interesting. So again, my eyes are going down these pages. I'm not picking up on a lot of this stuff until you mentioned it. But yeah, that was one of the questions I had, is about why isn't there a little bit more talk about false prophets? Because that was a big problem with the Israelites,
Right.
Because they had a religion that was like, okay, one of these days the Messiah is going to come. And that's in the Bible. That's about like, okay,
Right.
Jesus is different from these people who have come before, because they were magicians and crazy people, and Jesus is different. So yeah, that's interesting that when we have this old man who's like, oh, you're like the son of God, that Satan isn't also thinking like, oh, well, we've heard all this before, and like we've seen that, so why don't you do one of your miracles and prove it to me that you're the real son of God? Because that's what people do in the Bible all the time.
No, you're absolutely right. That was a big problem. There were hundreds of flim flam men and
Right.
tricksters, and it's like, I'm the Messiah, I'm the Messiah. So by the time Jesus shows up, like I'm when I'm growing up, I'm watching all the the Easter specials, and I was like, why is nobody believing this guy? He's doing all these miracles, and it's
Right.
like, oh no, like they really have seen this before so many times. This is like, it's like, oh, he's another one. Here we go.
Right.
Right.
But he is prepared in the Bible to like, okay, well, I understand that you don't believe me, so that's why I'm doing miracles. Like he does that several times, and he's like, okay, well now, even you were walking on water, and you could see there's no trick here. You're like you're actually walking on the sea, and you still don't believe. Like, why don't you believe?
Yeah, and the miracles he does are like, he almost does them because he has to. In a lot of them, right? He's like,
And some of them,
like, yeah, it's just like, oh no, we don't have enough food. It's like, all right, okay,
Right. Didn't want to pull this card out, but here you go.
And it's so he's not. What I'm trying to say is, like, he's not like, oh, everybody gather around, like what the tricksters would be doing.
Yeah, he does them on an individual basis, but again, I'm saying he does say, like, here's the truth, and he does the truth and does the miracle because you're disbelieving. I mean, that happens.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like when he decides that, okay, this will help them to see.
Yes. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And he says he'll do it for any children. He's like, bring me all the children who are suffering. I'll just do
Right.
that for free.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know if in the actual Bible anybody notes, it's like, yeah, all of this, like, he's doing all of this for free. Like, do we know if the false prophets charged?
There must have been some of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them. Yeah. Why else would they go through all that trouble? I guess.
Right. Yeah.
I guess to become the king of Jews and then
Right. Yeah. And then,
get crucified for it. That doesn't sound like a good idea.
well, that would be when they would drive. So, oh no, I'm actually not.
Look, strings everywhere. It's a false pocket, and there's all room for all these scarves. I swear.
False prophet, false pocket. There we go. He just turns into Charles Nelson Riley. No. But what do you think of this this last line by Satan? He talks about, it's like oh, it's like I'm actually man's friend, except in the end they'll be raised up, but I never will. It's like he's guilt tripping Jesus a little bit.
I think that's fair. I mean, it is Jesus's fault, I suppose, right? I mean, it's Adam and Eve's fault, but then God put him down there and was like, now you just watch for the rest of time, and at some point Jesus will be back and fix all this, and all of your great plans will be undone by Jesus.
Right. I mean, it's Satan's fault. Let's be he did start kind of a war.
Yeah. And the fall of man was his subterfuge after he lost the war.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And like Milton's Jesus is super harsh here. He's like, so I interpret it as like, nor do you deserve to be lifted up. He says, you were bad from the beginning, even up in heaven, and now when you go back up there, you feel even more in hell than when you're down here, because you remember what you've lost.
Okay.
Now I read the passage, and then I read like a translated version, like translated into it's already modern English, but translated into more modern English.
Right.
And that's what it says the passage says. But then I listened to the audiobook, and it almost sounds compassionate. It almost sounds like he's answering Satan by saying, it's like, so Satan's like, but I'll never be brought up again. And Jesus is saying, not if you keep thinking that way.
Okay.
Like you're stuck, right? And he's like, and he goes on and he says, like, you feel it, like, yeah, you brag that you're allowed to go back up to heaven to challenge God about Job and everything, but don't you feel like you're more in hell up there than when you're down in hell.
Okay,
Like I
so-
think he's like pointing it out to Satan.
The audiobook guy, his tack is to be his talk therapist for
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right. So it's like repeat. So talk therapist like repeats back oftentimes facts,
Right.
and then just like confronts you with what you just said, and now you have to listen to someone and you go, "Oh, you're right."
Yeah.
So you felt this way before the war, and you're still feeling it now, and it sounds like the war didn't help you.
Mm-hmm. Right. And but
Like,
then
therapist.
this is why I don't like going to these things.
Right. Right.
But yeah, and he says, and Job was your idea, right?
Mhm,
Don't put that
right.
on God. And you lost your own bet.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jesus continues, and this one does sound like a burn.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and yes, God told you to do the other thing, to lie to King Ahab, because that's the one thing that you're good for. You lie, and you also mix lies with the truth. Yes, God is allowing humans to seek answers from outside. He's allowing you to pose as the Oracle of Delphi,
Mm-hmm.
but that's all over now. Now they're going to have their own personal oracle in their hearts, right? So he's even if he doesn't understand how that's going to be,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is stating that's what the new situation is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And there's this flash of anger in Satan's eyes for just a second. Then he answers real smooth. He's like, and again, I read this two ways. So I'm gonna read this the first way. And so, he gets angry for just a split second, and then he's like, man, you're so quick to judge. But I guess that's just like you, isn't it? Some of us have to lie, but not you. You're God. And you know what? That's why I'm still here. That's why I'm taking this abuse. They say the truth hurts, but somehow when you speak it, I want to stay and hear more. I'm going to keep you company in this desert. That's not a sin, is it? Your father allows hypocrites and atheists to pray and preach at his altars. And hey, maybe you'll win me over, right? God changed Balaam's mind. Maybe you'll change my mind, right?
Jesus, like, you're always bringing up Balaam.
Ah, jeez.
Yeah, so who's Balaam? I have no
Okay,
idea.
so for those like myself who...
okay, good.
Yeah, no, I didn't... No, I don't pretend to, know all the... Like, as soon as Milton says a name, I'm like, shit. And then I got to go look him up.
Balaam, son of Beor. Okay, great.
Yeah, there you go.
He was hired by Balak of Moab.
Yeah. So he is a pagan prophet.
Okay.
Who was hired to curse the Israelites, but he ended up singing their praises through divine intervention. So Satan's using this like maybe you'll do the same for me. Maybe you'll change my heart, right? Yeah. And at first I read this as Satan kind of like teasing him, right? But there's moments later in this when Satan, it feels like Satan is being honest, and it's almost like Jesus is like affecting him in some way where all of his defenses are down and he can't help but tell the truth to it, like in front of Jesus. And so I could also read this as that's why I'm still here. Somehow when I hear you speak the truth, I want to stay and hear more. So, yeah. So I don't know, listeners, that is I leave it up to you. It could be that he's taunting Jesus. Or it could be that like a little bit of sincerity is breaking through just because he's like in the proximity of Jesus.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah. So, and Jesus is like, well, actually, geez, does this contradict everything I just said?
I don't think so. Yeah, he's not here to change Jesus' mind or anything.
Right.
Or I'm sorry, he's not there to be converted by Jesus.
Yeah.
That's just another BS line he's saying. Yeah.
Or, but like that's what I'm saying. Like, or is it? You know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's good.
Yeah. But so Jesus says, I didn't ask for you to come out here with me, but I'm not going to ask you to leave. Do whatever you want. You're only here because God's allowing you to be here.
Right.
And so Satan, still in his disguise, bows low. And Milton doesn't specify, but again, I could read this both ways. This could be like a mocking bow, or it could be a bow of acceptance or recognition. And then he vanishes. And as soon as he's gone, night falls and all the animals come out of hiding. I think Milton is saying that they were hiding from the heat of the day, but but we saw animals, you know.
Yeah, I read it as the devil for sure.
Yeah, no, I did too, right?
Mhm.
Because we saw animals earlier when Jesus was walking, right? So I personally like to think they hid when Satan showed up, and
Yeah,
now with him
absolutely.
gone, right, they're coming back out. Yeah.
Right.
And that's book one. The game is set. The first encounter has already happened, and the first trial has already been passed.
Mhm.
Keenan, what do we think of Milton's version of this story so far?
Well, the first thing I want to mention is mentioning that he disappears into thin air, as Milton does. And
Oh, yeah.
on this Dartmouth site that I'm reading this on, milton.host@dartmouth.edu, and they have
Mhm.
a Paradise Regained section. You can click on these little hyperlinks, and they say, yes, this is similar to how spirits disappear into thin air in The Tempest. So we usually say that Shakespeare is probably the coiner of that term.
Right, yes.
And so, yeah, within a few decades, if that's true, Milton is using it. So it's like, oh, there we go. I'm using it the same way. Yeah. I think it's interesting again here at the ending that Jesus is like, well, you're only going to be able to do what God the Father wants you to do.
Mhm.
So I'm not afraid of that. And it does feel more taunting than how we normally might say it in our everyday lives of like, well, you know, the good Lord's only going to give me what I can take and not anything more, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, he's not going to give me more than I can handle, etc. But this does feel more like not only is God on my side and I shall not want, but like God is my father. So do you know who my father is? It's a little bit more like
Might be a little bit of Milton's humanness, or Milton's
Yeah.
own self kind of like leaking
Yeah,
into this. Yeah.
It's a weird way to end because then it's a weird way to end the book with, because then, I mean, aren't we supposed to be afraid that he might be tempted in the next book?
Well,
And then he's like, well, I'm not worried about it because I have, you know, on my side is the Lord thy God.
I mean, you know, how reassured are we when anybody says that?
well, when anybody says that versus the son, the son of
yeah.
the father, yeah. Well, I don't know. I thought it was kind of a weird like dissipation of things, but
Mm,
anyways, overall, I think that this book is interesting. I think this is so much clearer than the Paradise Lost ones.
definitely.
Even though I'm still having trouble with it, like this feels more modern. Like we have a character who has some goal here, and we know who the antagonist is to that goal. And
Mhm.
yeah, I see this Satan as being, you know, a lot clearer in what he's trying to do with this Jesus as the hero. So
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a much more like simple interaction, right?
yeah, mhm.
He's just, you know, meets him out in the desert. And I really like this. It's Rogers pointed this out. The language of this poem is a lot more stripped and pared and almost, you know, kind of like bare bones.
Right.
Which is like funny because it's like the last poem was about a lush garden and you had all of these flowery stanzas, you know, that we had trouble, you know, hacking our way through. And this one is just dry desert.
Desert, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a desert folk, right? We're from Vegas.
Yeah, we're both desert. Well, we're just simple desert folk gathering sticks.
Which means when you're from Vegas that you don't go out into the desert.
No.
Why would you?
Yeah.
You stay inside.
My roommates still can't understand. Like anybody, nobody understands why I love it so cold. And it's like, you're from Vegas, and I was like, yeah, like I have, you know, the AC blasting on my skin 24/7. Yeah. My students, like when I was teaching ESL, we had some students from Saudi Arabia, and they were the same way. They were
Right, of
like
course.
I love it cold. Like I gotta have it cold. It's like, because the alternative is
Death.
yeah.
It is death. Yeah. So what do you think about this book here?
I like the addition of this old man.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I love that Milton's Satan is. How many times have his disguises worked?
Well, he fooled Uriel on the sun that he was a
Yeah.
little baby.
Yeah, right. So he fooled Uriel and Eve, and that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Right. No other time. Like, and he has disguised himself many more times than that, and none of them have worked. And I love that now he's not giving up on it. He's still doing it, and he'll even do it like when he's by himself or when he's talking to people he knows, right? And people who know it's him, he's still got to dress
When
up.
he's talking to unconscious people, he dresses up. Yeah, or performs as a frog.
Yes.
But as Jesus said in that kind of you know, finger waggy way at the ending here, like, what else are you good for except to lie to people?
Yeah.
That's the answer to his Billie Eilish Barbie song. What was I made for? It's like to lie to people.
do love. I mean, I like that we're getting a little bit more characterization. Like
Mhm.
he is talking to Jesus as it's a little bit. It sounds weird, but it's like
Uh-huh.
man to man,
Right.
because he's bragging about his exploits, but then
Mhm.
he's also kind of like there's a little bit of like it's like, oh, I'm never going to get raised up, like,
Mhm.
and whether that's like a dig
Mhm.
at Jesus / God, or like him opening up
Yeah.
to Jesus, like either one, neither one of those are in the actual body. Like the depiction in the Gospels doesn't really characterize Satan at all,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
It's almost like he is a force, right?
Mhm. Right. But here they are. I was gonna say childhood friends, but that's not. They're like childhood frenemies, right? I mean,
Right. I mean, Rogers calls it a sibling rivalry.
right. Okay. Great.
Right, and you guys like and we're jumping ahead, but there's a lot of wordplay about like the Son of God and sons of God.
Okay.
Like I think in the last book, so I'm excited to talk about that. But yeah,
Cool.
so you could almost think of them as like that's just super blasphemous, but like like brothers in a sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
You said it,
they're-
not me, but sure.
Yeah. Jeez. Oh God, it's recorded forever and ever. Right.
Amen.
But now that's the like really oversimplified like if you want to give Satan human character traits,
Mhm.
and he's he's a jealous sibling, and he's like, look dad, look at how sinful they are,
Mhm. Right.
But yeah, folks, let's jump into book 2. That opens up and we get right back into it. Again, no argument, no Milton up top. We're just back at the River Jordan. And the newly baptized, specifically Simon Peter and Andrew, who have known Jesus up to this point, are still in shock to have seen the heavens open up and God's voice declare their friend and teacher, his beloved son. And now that he's gone, they just feel this terrible loss. Milton doesn't specify, but I want to imagine that it's not like just because they discovered he's the Messiah and now he's gone. I like to believe they feel an emptiness whenever he's not there. Like we're going to see in this story that Jesus has an effect on the other characters. Specifically, we're going to see this most with Satan, because he spends the most time with him. But like Satan can't help but act differently in his presence. But we also see that characters are affected by Jesus's absence as well. And it's not an intentional thing. Jesus isn't like casting a spell or anything. It's just his presence, his nearness affects them. And I don't even know if this was intentional by Milton. And we'll get into that once we get back to Satan. But I'm reading it as they're all affected by his presence, and also right now by his absence. They feel this deep sense of loss. This is a weird backwards comparison, but it's very much like how Blatty describes people in Father Marin's presence.
Okay.
Remember in the beginning of the book, the tea shop owner, the curator, aka Jesuit Dean, they feel this sense of loss when Marin leaves, that they can't explain, right? Tea shop owner doesn't even know him,
Right.
but he feels something. But Jesuit Dean feels it as well, with the departing of his old friend. And Chris and Karis don't know him either. But when he shows up at the end, these two strangers feel this sense of peace and safety. There is something about this guy. You're with him and you feel like everything's going to be all right. And obviously Blatty was making him a Jesus figure, even though in the broader sense, I think Marin, Karis, and Chris sort of make up the trinity of Father, Son, and Spirit.
Sure.
But Marin has that same presence about him that is often portrayed in Jesus. There's just something about this guy. You just feel good around him, and when he's not there, the world feels a little darker.
Yeah, but also Father Marin's out there in the desert being tempted at the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. So probably, you know what, Keenan? I'm going to say probably intentional. I'm just going to go out on a limb there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So you're telling me this is Simon Peter.
And Andrew.
And Andrew, who is Simon Peter's brother. All right, that makes sense. I believe you.
And it's not, again, I think this is Milton doing this, saying that they all got baptized at the same time. I don't think that is in the Bible.
They're the first apostles, so I guess he's like implying that this is how they became the first apostles, right?
Right. But at the same event of Jesus's
I don't
baptism?
believe that's not how I understand it. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Maybe I don't know. Yeah, but I'm just saying by Milton's time they were calling him Peter. right?
Right.
Like Saint Peter.
Yeah.
So he's just being obtuse on purpose, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, no, this is Milton we're talking about.
Right. So the whole rest of the book, I was reading him as the other Simon because I thought he would read this as Peter. He would read this as Peter. So
Yeah.
I'm just mad at Milton again.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. This could be the other.
No,
one.
it makes sense.
Mm.
Simon and Andrew, because they're brothers and they're the first two apostles. So here we go.
Yeah. There we go. Leopard, Tree of Knowledge, Simon Peter, or just Simon. We don't know. Yeah. It's probably them. Yeah.
I think that they started referring to him as Simon Peter to differentiate him from the other Simon.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know why we stopped doing that.
No, this is Milton. This is.
Okay.
He's specifically out to get us.
Well, then he like you were telling me, right? Everyone like Jesus's name is a version of Heshua, and then there's all these other Heshuas out there, and
Right. And there's
so we
Joshua,
just-
and there's
and Joshua. So we just call him Jesus because there's a bunch of other Jesuses.
Right. Yeah.
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 Like there's two Judases amongst the
Yes.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they
Yeah,
try
folks.
to amongst the apostles. So
Mm-hmm.
they try to make that very clear because that could be very
not
confusing.
just in Judea, like
Right.
in the apostles.
In the apostles, right. I mean, yeah, but that's
Yeah.
again like a reason why, like again, like the historicity of Christ, like why, like some people point and say, like, well, if you were writing this as myth,
Mhm.
you wouldn't have two Simons and you wouldn't have two Judases.
Right.
That's confusing as all heck.
Right. That's much more like real life, where you have like
Mhm.
you have like two friends named Bill or
Right.
Billy,
Mhm,
Billy Friedkin and Bill Blatty.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What are the odds that one of them is the writer and one of them is the director?
And Disney was run at one point just a couple years ago by two Bobs,
Well, there
Bob
you go. Yeah,
Iger
right.
and Bob Chapek. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
right.
and there was a war at Disney, so you had people going like, "Oh, fucking Bob,"
Mhm.
and you knew just by their intonation which Bob they were talking about. But-
Exactly. Right. But yeah. Okay. So we got.
Anyways, I'm caught
we
up
got-
now, I believe.
Good. So we got Andrew,
Okay.
who's definitely Andrew,
Luckily, yeah.
and we got Simon,
Uh-huh.
who might be Simon or Simon Peter, right? But yeah, so they're looking all over. They have looked all over for Jesus,
Mhm.
and so now they are in a cottage by the river, and they're almost mourning. And
Mhm.
yeah, they're talking about the prophecy of the Messiah, and that adds to their distress because like they think he disappeared and he's gone for good,
Mhm.
and they wonder if God just took him back up like he did with Elijah, another prophet who didn't die but was just like taken up to heaven. And they're like, no, God wouldn't tease us like that. He wouldn't show us the Savior and then snatch him back from us like a sadistic cat.
Okay.
They obviously never read Milton's more famous work. Milton's God would totally do that. But another thing I keep having to remind myself whenever there's a story about Jesus,
Mhm.
they're also despairing about the present, right? Like we've hinted at this, we've alluded to this. Jerusalem is occupied by Rome.
Mhm.
And these people are looking back at the early parts of their story, right? At Moses, which was 1,400 years ago at this point,
Okay.
right? 14 centuries separate Moses and Jesus. And like they're looking back at a time when God was active on earth.
Mhm.
He would stretch out his hand and save his people from earthly dangers, from famine, from drought, from other kingdoms, like he did with Egypt and Assyria
Mhm.
and Persia. And now it's Rome. And the Jewish people are like it's time, God, like, please send the Mashiach. He needs to come now. He needs to save us from Rome. And if I'm understanding correctly, and my Jewish friends, please educate me if I misspeak, the idea of paradise after life was not a thing. The idea was we would go back to paradise on earth. There
Mhm.
would be another Eden, and God would return and heal this broken world, and there'd be peace, and we would be able to walk and talk with God again.
Mhm. That's my understanding of it as well. So yes, if we've misunderstood it or if things have changed over the time of the theology, I'd like to hear that too.
Right. And again, like 1,400 years
Mhm.
from Moses to Jesus's time, and you can see how maybe even those laws and those interpretations can change.
Mhm.
And people are thinking, man, I sure wish God would do what he used to do according to our holy books, right? And you wonder if like maybe people even in Jesus's time were like, was that just a story? Like, was that, like, did he actually come down? Like, I've never seen anything. Like, it's been 1,400 years since anything like that has happened.
That must have happened.
Right? Like, and maybe even religious leaders, like, interpreting it the way we interpret the New Testament now.
Right.
And we say it's like, oh, well, the devil it's more of a personification of this, and hell is a state of mind and everything like that. I wonder if the old Hebrew religious leaders were doing that with, the laws of Moses and everything, and kind of like making it a little bit more palatable to modern, then modern followers.
That just probably wasn't as written down, or it might have been even more personal, so people weren't writing it down and saving it for history.
Right.
But we had 1,900 years since the last book of the New Testament was written, so it's even longer than this period you're talking about.
Right. But it is interesting to like folks to kind of like get that in your head. Jesus coming to the Jewish people now is almost like the same distance of time as if he came to us today, right? Like it's 2,000 years from Jesus now, and it was 1,400 years from Moses to Jesus.
Right.
So again, growing up and watching like all the non-believers as Jesus, rolls into Jerusalem, and I'm like, man, like, don't they see? But it's like we would have the same reaction, if you showed up now, right?
Yeah.
No, it would. Hey, like, if this pattern tracks, he's not gonna do a repeat of what he already did, right? He's not gonna show up looking like, blonde hair, blue eye. Well, he wasn't in the first place, but
he's not going to ride a donkey into Jerusalem.
Right. He's probably, hey, you know what? Like, he's probably already here. You probably passed him, on the subway,
on the way to your job interview.
Yeah.
You didn't stop and help him.
Yeah.
It turns out he's the job interviewer.
But no, like I'm being snotty here, but like, no, I'm saying it's like, that's what they say, right? It's like, like he's Vinnie Russell in the subway.
Right.
He's, that woman that you didn't, help or whatever. Right. Cause we're expecting, the movie Jesus to come, but how do we know he's not, already kicking around here and, you just like ignored him today, or her, or, whatever. Yeah. So that is what's going on here, right? Not only do these guys miss their friend, they're also thinking of the story of their people, right? Is this a new chapter? Where did he go? How long until he comes back? How long until we're saved? And then, like, what does saved mean? Does it mean the literal physical liberation of, from Rome or something else?
Right.
And I really love where we go next. I love that Milton put it in this order. We got everyone missing Jesus because, he's their friend, their teacher, and now their confirmed savior. And then we cut to Mary, who's just missing her son. And man, this passage really drives home what a rough time Mary has had this entire time, right? Like from the time of Jesus's conception, which, put her in a precarious social position, as an unwed woman, traveling from Nazareth to Bethlehem near the end of her pregnancy, being forced to give birth in a stable, and then immediately go into hiding because, Herod wants to kill her son, and then lose him for 3 days when he's 12.
Right.
Like, I didn't remember the 3 days part. I thought it was like, during a trip into town or something.
Yeah.
But parents, 3 days. And then watch, and then, find him and, everything's okay. And then watch him grow, and then watch him grow into a man. And suddenly all these people are coming over,
right?
And they're calling him rabbi. And all the religious and political leaders have taken notice. Like the Pharisees, the Sanhedrin, the Sadducees, and the Roman officials are watching him. Like, who is this guy? Is he a cult leader? Is he an insurrectionist? And now he's gone again. Right? Like everyone comes back from the baptism, and Mary hears them all recounting the event and proclaiming her son to be the Messiah, but he doesn't come back from the baptism, and no one knows where he is. And remember, this is the 40 days. So 3 days, a parent would lose their mind. I don't know what happens after 40 days.
Right.
And I don't imagine Jesus, like, left a note at home. I think this was a spontaneous thing.
Yeah.
Right? And so he's going to be gone for 40 days.
Yeah.
But Mary doesn't say nothing to nobody. Like,
he could have paged her.
I mean, you know,
he is the Son of God.
I mean, yeah.
She could have just, it could have just buzzed her awake at night. And she's like, what is this? And then it has a little message on, my son invented a pager in the night, and here it is.
Right. And also made me understand what it is.
Right, exactly. God made me to understand what a pager was, and I had comfort in my heart.
Or it's, if you really are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here. And then he's like, it is also written that beep, 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 beep. Mom! He had his whole thing. He was all, it's like, this is the final test, right? I'm just checking up on you, honey. Are you okay? Hangs up. He's like, sorry, that was my mind. It's okay. That's okay. But yeah, so he's gone. And like Satan and like Jesus, Mary soliloquizes to herself, but not for the same reason. She does it because she is forced to. She can't go to anyone about this, right? Like, one, because she's a woman, and two, because saying anything might alert the authorities, right? If they weren't the ones who already took him, right?
Right.
And three, because while she admits she didn't understand his mission before, she now trusts that he is in God's hands and he is safe. But still, I love how Milton ended with her in this montage of people missing him. Like, she's the one suffering the most.
Right.
And in the same stanza, Milton does this thing, which I can only describe as a dissolve, like in film where you go from like one scene to the next. Usually happens like at the end of a stanza, right? We get the meanwhile, right? And it's another stanza,
right?
Another scene. But here, like, poetically, we fade from Mary's soliloquy to a shot of Jesus still wandering in the desert, almost like a signifier that she's thinking about him. And then we fade again in the same stanza. Still, all of this is the same, because turns out someone else is also thinking real hard about Jesus, right? Satan's back up there in the clouds, and he has called another council, and the new stanza finally begins when he speaks, right? And he says, princes, heaven's ancient sons, ethereal thrones, demonian spirits now, from the element each of his reign allotted, rightly are called powers of fire, air, water, and earth beneath. So may we hold our place in these mild seats without new trouble. Such an enemy is risen to invade us, who no less threatens than our expulsion down to hell. So he recounts how he met Jesus in the desert and thinks now that they underestimated him. He once again asks the council for advice.
He loves councils.
Yeah. And the first demon to stand up is our good buddy Belial. Hey, Belial's here, right? And Keenan, I can't believe we didn't think of this before, right? In our casting, right? So he's supposed to be outwardly pretty and inwardly despicable.
Okay.
Right? He's Gaston.
Gaston is worthless. That's what Belial means. Yeah. All right.
Right.
Great.
Yeah. Right. But also, like, okay, so in this sequel, Milton adds a little bit to his character here.
Right.
So remember, he was all about sloth, right?
Yeah.
And that was his name, worthless,
Right.
right? But since being here on Earth, he's apparently gotten really sexual.
That's what he took my advice. Okay.
And Milton says, like, apart from Asmodeus, he is the most lustful of all the demons.
Sweet.
Yeah. And remember, folks, like, Asmodeus is often associated with the sin of lust, right? In demonology, he's one of the seven princes, coinciding with the seven deadly sins. So his is lust, right? But apparently, Belial is almost as horny as he is.
Yeah. Milton calls him the fleshliest incubus.
Yeah. There we go. So Belial says, Set women in his eye and in his walk. Among daughters of men the fairest found. Many are in each region, passing fair as the noon sky, more like to goddesses than mortal creatures, graceful and discreet, expert in amorous arts, enchanting tongues, and Satan cuts him off. He's like, Belial, he's rubbing his temples, right?
Right.
He's like, once again, thank you for your contribution, but not everybody shares your enthusiasm. We recognize your accomplishments. You and your legions did some good work back in the day, mingling with the daughters of men and creating that race of giants. So he's given that to Belial, right?
Okay, all right.
And he also mentions like all the female characters from Greek mythology who were seduced by, gods, and he attributes that to Belial's crew.
So Zeus coming down as a dolphin and fucking your mom.
That's either Belial or one of Belial's soldiers.
All right, great, good.
Right? Yeah. Any kind of like lusty
Mhm.
shenanigans that happen in Greek and Roman mythology.
Uh-huh.
That was them.
Great.
Yeah. And he mentions Solomon,
Mhm.
who remember was seduced from God by foreign women in the end, right?
Mhm. He gave up the temple for his lust, yeah.
Yeah, right. And he finishes by saying Jesus is not Solomon. He's different. And he's not going to be turned by a pretty face. But yeah, what I like about this is you almost get the sense that every council they have, Belial has stood up and it's like, well, what about the dames?
Yeah, the hot chicks. We need more hot chicks in this plan.
And it's just like, in these meetings, it's like, okay, and I think, I'm all out of ideas, guys. It's like, what should I do next to Job? And just Belial raises his hand and is like, aside from the hot chicks. And then just Belial lowers his hand.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so Satan says, no, we got to aim higher. We got to tempt him with glory and honor.
Okay.
That's what men desire most. And also, I know he's weak with hunger now. I have an idea. But I need some volunteers. I need some extras in this production I'm going to do.
So no volunteers for Belial's plan.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, you need volunteers for this plan. Sure.
Yeah.
Belial's so pissed.
He's the only one who spoke.
At this council, yeah.
And Satan shot him down. And then he's like, actually, we're going to go with my idea. Right.
But that's more than usual, because usually it's just his idea at the council. So
yeah, right.
He was being much more democratic than normal by even allowing Belial to.
He allowed one person to speak. Yeah.
Or do you think that's why he's the only one who speaks at these councils? Because every time it's Belial saying, we get some hot Hooters waitresses and we fatten them up. And yeah, in the Wikipedia, like 3-sentence depiction of this book, it says Belial advises using a honey trap. So they even use it, that term. And like an espionage, the honey trap of like, hey, get a put someone sexy at the bar after James Bond has been there, and then she'll seduce James Bond and kill him.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Belial's plan. Right.
He sees Jesus as Bond.
Right.
Jesus Christ.
Exactly, right. I was just... Yeah, but Satan has an idea, and he needs some volunteers, so all the other angels, or all the other demons are, right. And it says he selects a few of his closest, cleverest demons, and they fly off back to the desert. And you imagine on the way, he's like handing out scripts. He's like, okay, you be this guy, and when I say this line, you're going to do this.
And none of them are like, wait a minute, you have scripts, but you were asking us for our ideas, and you already had scripts printed out for your idea.
Just go with it. Just go with it. Yes, and. And so, so that was the council. You might have noticed, folks, there wasn't much to it, right?
Right.
It was just, Belial was the only one, and, we got shot down, which is how these councils go. But yeah, so now we cut back to Jesus, and at this point, it has been 40 days. He has not eaten, but also he has not been hungry, strangely, until now. So he hasn't really counted those days as suffering, but he is feeling the hunger now. But even now, he reflects that he is fine with being hungry in the service of enlightenment, as long as he doesn't die out here. And he trusts that God won't let that happen.
That's his one rule.
Yeah.
To not die out there.
To not die. Right.
So just Milton taking literally the 40 days thing. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, right.
Because we will now know that 40 days is kind of hyperbole, like a lot of days.
Right, many, many days,
Right,
yeah.
but for Milton, it's 40 days. So on the 40th day.
Right, yeah. So night falls and he sleeps and he dreams of food. He dreams that he is eating with Elijah in that famous scene in Kings 1 when the angel awakens Elijah who has been out in the desert for 40 days.
Mm-hmm.
And in that story, the angel has laid out this wonderful feast for Elijah. And so that's what Jesus is dreaming about.
Mm-hmm.
That's that he's with Elijah at the feast. But then, of course, he wakes up still hungry.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be the worst,
Yeah.
right? You're dreaming about food and then you wake up and there's no food. Right? And he gets up and he moves on. He tops a hill and he spies way off in the distance a shaded grove. That's another thing. Like even before this, Milton has been describing this quote unquote desert with a lot of forest imagery, right? He calls it a woody maze at one point.
Okay.
But apparently this grove that Jesus spots looks even better. So after half a day's walk, he finally gets there, and suddenly a man is standing before him, not a lowly shepherd like before, but in the fine clothes of a city dweller or a palace courtier. And of course, we know this is Satan, right? And he doesn't even pretend anymore. He's like, by God's permission, I have come back, but I'm surprised to see you, his son, still out here and still hungry. There have been others who have walked this path. Hagar and her son were led to water by the angel, and Elijah was given a feast in the desert, but no one has come to help you yet. No one cares that you're out here. No one except me.
Uncle Sadie.
Yeah. Right? And I love how, each time they meet again, right? Satan's speech is, very, very long, right? It's got, he's doing all this, historical recounting, and Jesus's first reply is very short, right? Jesus says simply, they were in need, I am not. And Satan replies, he's like, but you're hungry, I know that. And he's like, tell me, if food was put before you right now, just like in those other stories, would you eat it?
Right.
And Jesus says that depends on who's offering it. And Satan's like, why does that matter? Right? Also, doesn't everything belong to you anyway? All of creation is crying out for you to eat, right? It's troubled that you should be hungry. It wants to serve you. Behold. And then nothing happens. And Satan coughs and he's like, it wants to serve you. Behold. And then suddenly, far off, under the shade of the largest tree in the grove, there appears a table laden with food, literally fit for a king, right? It's this amazing feast, and standing by, ready to serve, are these attendants, and they're all richly dressed as musicians and dancers, right? Yeah. And Satan teases Jesus. He's like, oh, come on, this isn't forbidden fruit, right? It's not going to hurt you, right? All of these are angels who wish to serve you. So why do you hesitate, Son of God? Why do you reject these gifts that I freely give to you? And Jesus replies, he says, if everything belongs to me, how can these be gifts?
That's a very good point.
Yeah, right? And if angels wish to serve me, I can summon them to serve me. And if I have a right to eat any food I please, I also have a right not to eat it. And what do you care about my hunger? Right? And Satan tries to hide it, but he's a little peeved. He's like, you see that I also have the power to give things to whomever I please. Why wouldn't you accept something which I am giving to you freely with no strings attached? But I see that you're going to be suspicious whatever I do. I'll never again be able to do a good deed without you thinking there's something behind it. That's fine. That's fine. And lastly, he says, there's other heroes in other stories who deserve this food more. And nothing happens. And Satan says again, there's other heroes in other stories who deserve this food more. And then suddenly, the food and the table and the dancers and the servants, they all vanish, right? And Milton says, with the sound of wings and claws. I really like that.
Oh,
right? Like harpies' wings and claws. And now it's just Satan and Jesus again, right? And Satan says to Jesus, you seem impervious to hunger. Your mind is set on higher things, but how are you going to achieve them? Great deeds require great power and renown, but nobody knows who you are. You're a carpenter's son. You grew up poor. You disappear into the desert and nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're going to die of hunger and thirst. What is your plan? How are you going to achieve anything out here? Where does your authority come from? Where are your followers? Where's your army? How are you going to move the masses? Money moves people. Money brings friends and followers. Money is what put Herod on the throne of Judea, your throne. He's not even Jewish, but he's got powerful friends. Wow, so do you. Money and power are mine to bestow. Those whom I favor are rich and powerful, while the virtuous and the wise and the brave sit in poverty. And Jesus says to him, money without those three things is impotent. And he points to all the great empires of the world which fell at the height of their wealth. And then he mentions Gideon, Jephthah, and David, right? It's 2 judges and a king of Israel, all men of humble beginnings who went on to become great people and do great things. And not just them, he also mentions Quintius, Fabricius, Curius, and Regulus. These were Roman leaders who were renowned for their wisdom and virtue rather than their wealth. But yeah, I mean, like, actually, so remember, folks, like just like Dante, Milton was a huge fan of the Greek and Roman writers and philosophers, right? So in the same way that Dante's like, I'm going to travel through hell and purgatory with Virgil, who's actually my best friend, right? Milton is doing the same thing by having Jesus say, oh, and also those Roman thinkers, they were really cool, right? So it's as out of place in the Jesus story as an Italian poet in hell.
Yeah, but I mean, in the Bible, Jesus doesn't, not that I can ever recall, like, quote Roman philosophers to the Romans to like get anything out of them.
No.
You know, he's just not like, oh, you know, let me use your Roman logic against you,
Right.
you Romans. He doesn't do that.
No, he doesn't. No. But so in here, he actually finishes up with something very close to what Lao Tzu is quoted as saying. You know, the whole he who controls others may be powerful, but he who has mastered himself is mightier still, right? That's Lao Tzu. So Jesus says, anyone who can rule over themselves, control their passions and their desires, their fears, that person will be greater than any king. And he follows that up. He says, anyone can do this, right? Doesn't matter who they are or where they come from. Like, but a king without these qualities will not be able to hold on to their kingdom for long.
Right.
And he says his kingdom is going to be all about that. It's going to teach people how to govern themselves from the inside, teach them compassion and empathy. And so he concludes, he says, wealth then is unnecessary, both for its own sake and for the reasons one might seek it, right? Especially to gain power, right? Which often just brings more enemies and more trouble, right? Both inside and out.
Well, that's like, you know, like Scarface, I suppose. He says, in America, first you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the women. That's Scarface's big plan.
Right. And this is where Belial raises his hand. He's like, how about we switch that order just a bit?
I like in your version where Satan is trying to get them to do their big flourish and they're not there. They haven't done it. It's like, behold, and then they don't do it. I like in this version that they're off doing Belial's thing each time. Whenever he has his back turned to them, they're over in Belial's plan.
They're like, this is way more fun.
This is way more fun. But they're probably like, no, you all have to stay here, but I'm going to go off and help Belial. And they're like, you don't get to go help Belial. I'm going to go help Belial. You have to stay here, help the boss.
Yeah, the boss doesn't need any help. He's the boss. But yeah, folks, this is where the second book ends really weirdly in the middle of this conversation between Jesus and Satan. We don't even see Satan's reaction to this. Keenan, I have my opinions, but first, like, what did you think, like, of this book, and then, like, of this book as a whole, and then also how it ends, like, right here?
Well, I'm not sure what else there is to be done. This is what I remember of the story, of these two books. So I don't remember what happens next, if anything. I thought Satan comes and offers 3 temptations, and then Jesus says no. So we got 2 more books here. This
is the only time in Paradise Regained and Paradise Lost that Milton does the abrupt cut.
Does he? Doesn't that happen in the middle of Raphael's stories and stuff?
In the Raphael, I did think of that. In the Raphael stories, he's telling multiple stories,
right?
And at least within a book, he finishes one story.
Okay, so so we're literally in the middle of something here.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
I
this
have
is-
not read ahead, so
Yeah, so this is like an argument because Milton has like created this like fourth temptation, this new temptation, with the feast, right? Because that's not in the Bible.
oh, okay. I was just counting 1, 2, 3, so I was like, all right,
Yeah, so this isn't like the second temptation traditionally, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and so this is just like, hey, like, why don't you eat this food? There's no strings attached. There's nothing wrong with it.
Mhm.
Like, I'm just giving this to you. Why not take it? And Satan makes his argument. Jesus makes his argument, and then the food goes away. Satan says something to him,
Mhm.
and then he's like, "Oh yeah, I can get you money." And Jesus says, "I don't need money," and then the book ends.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
it's just like, it seems like such a weird place to end. And like this is
Oh, so we've only done 2 so far. I think I was
Yes.
counting Belial with the sex stuff as a third one. So I was like 1, 2, 3, done. All right, so we have more coming. We have.
Oh,
We
yeah.
have. All right.
we
great.
have 2 more,
coming.
right?
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
But yeah, so like, folks, this is the only time in Paradise Regained and Paradise Lost
Mhm.
that Milton like stops mid conversation that I remember.
Mhm.
And I tried to look around and I tried to see if there was like a reason for it. And although scholars have commented on it, none of them know for sure why he did it. Some
Mhm.
people are saying, he did it for suspense. Some people are saying he wanted to end on a win for Jesus. And some people are saying it's symbolic because, the struggle of good and evil is still happening today.
Mhm.
I like that, but I don't think Milton was thinking of that. I think he suddenly realized this book is already longer than book 1,
Okay.
and he hasn't even gotten to the second temptation yet. Which, like, that's another thing, right?
Mhm.
Like this whole book 2, is entirely Milton's invention. There is no feast out in the middle of the desert in any of the Gospels, right?
Mhm.
Matthew and Luke are the only Gospels to have the temptations.
Mhm.
Matthew is bread first, jumping from the temple, and then all the kingdoms of the world.
Mhm.
Luke is bread, kingdoms of the world, and temple.
Okay.
Mark talks about Jesus being tempted in the desert, but he doesn't like mention the temptations.
Mhm.
And Matthew doesn't have the temptation narrative at all. So Milton has added an entirely new fourth temptation
Okay.
with this table of food. And it seems like scholars are like 50-50 on it, right? It's like some like it, some say it like develops the characters a little bit more. Some say it's unnecessary, like we already had the physical hunger temptation, right?
Mhm.
And I like it. I like the exchange between them, but the addition does make it seem like Satan goes back up to the council after the bread, and he's like, I don't know what to do. I tempted him with food, and it didn't work. I know. I'll tempt him with other food.
What if Jesus don't like bread?
Yeah, Also, actually, I would argue that the bread temptation is the stronger because not only does it appeal to Jesus's hunger, but it's a chance for him to prove himself. Like if you're really the Son of God, you could easily do this.
Mhm.
And I think that aligns better with the other temptations because all of the original 3 have an underlying temptation associated with the desire to prove oneself,
Okay.
right? Like,
Mhm.
show me you can do this. Show them that you can jump from the temple and the angels will come save you, right? Everyone will see and they'll immediately believe in you, right?
Mhm.
Show the world how strong you are by becoming the earthly ruler of all the kingdoms, right?
Mhm.
Satan is offering Jesus the temptation of validation and self-actualization.
Right.
Which, like, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, right, those are the 2 highest levels of the pyramid, right?
Mhm.
So it's the thing that we all desire most deeply, to be seen and to be known by others and to see and know ourselves.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that's why, like, I don't think this extra one, I like, more character stuff, but
Uh-huh.
it doesn't match with the other 3 original temptations because
Mhm.
it's Jesus didn't make the food appear, right?
Right.
So I like this second book because, more Satan versus Jesus,
Mhm.
but it feels like one of those like really good deleted scenes that was cut because it's redundant and
Mhm.
not as strong as what's in the final cut, right?
Mhm.
And those are great, right? Like, you buy the DVD, you watch them, you enjoy them, and most of the time you also understand why they were cut, right?
Mhm.
That's book 2 for me.
Yeah. So this is the version you've never read.
Right. This is the version you've never read, right? Extra biblical, right? Which it really is.
Right.
But yeah, folks, that is all of my notes. All right, well, that was great. Thanks, past Lester and Keenan. Well, folks, I have been Lester Ryan Clark, both in the past and in the present. You can summon me on all the socials as Lester Ryan Clark.
And I am immune to the bounds of time, and I've been Keenan Diaz, and you can invoke me on Instagram and Letterboxd at Howdy Keenan.
Yeah, find more of our shows and other really cool podcasts at True Story FM. Like us on Instagram and join our Facebook listener group, Dante's Ninth Circle Sushi and Karaoke Bar. Or feel free to drop us a message at thedevilsdetails@gmail.com. Wouldst thou like to live deliciously? We're not even asking for your souls. Just give us a 5-pentagram rating on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to our show. That and sharing the show by word of mouth or on social media helps our little podcast grow and find more cool people like you. All right, folks. Until next week, love and hisses. Mwah!
Do you see the Tower of Babel?
That's why this program exists. Wow, we're at the Last Supper. Can you see which disciple is going to betray Jesus? Yes, it's Judas.
Oh, that's funny. Do you know who begat Enoch?
God, I used to know.
That's right, Jared.
Yes! You know, I can just sit back and she'll answer for me. I don't know why.
Yeah. Can you tell me who begat Noah?
Oh, God. I used to know this.
That's right. It's Lamech.
Yes, yes. I don't know why I watch this show. It just makes me feel stupider.
Do you know who begat Jesse?
No.
That's right. Obed.
And the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm and said, "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation?" Do you understand who marked off its dimensions? Who stretched a measuring line across it? Or who laid its cornerstone?
Was it you?
That's right! Then the Lord said unto Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know." He replied, "Am I my brother's keeper?" "Oh no! There's the deceiver! Everybody! Deceiver, no deceiving!
Deceiver,
Deceiver, no deceiving!
Deceiver, no deceiving.
Aw, man!